So good evening, everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Nuala and I lead the lender engagement on the CCR, on the Central Credit Register. So the focus of my presentation this evening is on inquiry into the CCR. So the credit reports that you will receive from the CCR and the obligations and powers you have with respect to making inquiries on the CCR. As part of that, we look at your obligations, so under the Credit Reporting Act, and the powers you have with respect to inquiry. We look at some of the features of the CCR credit report itself, and also I'll share some information on the tools that we'll be making available to consumers to help them understand their credit report and their rights with regards to the CCR. First, however, I'd like to start by giving an update on the CCR project and look at where we stand at the moment. So in September 2016, we published our CCR handbook. So this comprised the guidance on the CCR and the various technical manuals. At that time, credit unions and other credit information providers began onboarding to the CCR and began accessing the documentation, so that CCR handbook, and analysing the requirements, in particular the reporting requirements for the CCR. The regulations for the CCR became effective on the 30th of June of this year, and since that time we have been taking in data to test on the CCR. We also began our consumer information campaign back in June, which included a media campaign, which you may have heard our radio ads. And so looking ahead this year, the 31st of December is our reporting deadline, so that's in a few weeks' time. We're coming up quite close to that. After the 31st of December, credit unions and all other credit information providers will move into a monthly reporting cycle. So you'll be reporting to the CCR on a monthly basis using the value date at the end of the month for your records that are outstanding. In 2018, you'll also begin inquiry on the CCR, and I'll talk about that a little later. By September of next year, so September 30, 2018, there will be a mandatory credit check. And again, I'll cover the details of that shortly. So this is where we're at the moment. We're in November. As I said, our reporting deadline is coming soon. So with respect to the project so far, over the past year, and particularly over the last few months, we've had very positive engagement from credit unions, from your representative bodies, and from the technical suppliers as you've undertaken the work to meet that reporting deadline. And this is really acknowledged. So lenders, Phase 1A, credit information providers, include credit unions and your pilot credit unions that are part of pilot groups. Also, banks, loan book holders, and other lenders are progressing through the testing cycles at the moment. So for many of you, this may be where you're part of a pilot group or you're waiting to come on board with your technical provider. So as we work through the testing, we are encountering some data quality issues. We're working with credit information providers to remediate those. That will be an ongoing activity as we encounter issues with either personal data, subject data, or with contract data. We will work with you to try to fix those and to ensure that we have a high standard of data quality in the CCR. So with the 31st of December approaching, it's important that credit unions check their state of readiness for the CCR. So if you have any concerns or you feel there are any challenges in meeting the deadline, there are only a few weeks to go, but you would need to contact the CCR team. The SIP onboarding email address that you should be familiar with is the email address to use, or you can contact me directly in the central bank. It's important to note, as you test your records and as you move into production, we gave some guidance earlier this year regarding your data protection obligations. So this is in respect to the data that you will be reusing for the CCR. The recommendation that the central bank gave was that you inform your members that you are reusing their data for the CCR. So many of you have used the model letter that we made available on the Central Credit Register website. This model letter was used by a number of lenders to inform consumers that their data is being used for the CCR and to inform them about what the CCR is really about. So I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, I know many of you have, to access that model letter and that guidance in the lender area of the CCR website. So, moving on to inquiring on the CCR. So this will be familiar to some of you. I would encourage you to look at the guidance on the CCR. This is, again, is in the lender area of the CCR website, which gives you a lot more detail than I'm going to cover this evening. The technical information then is set out in the A2A manual and the web user guide. So if you're going to access the CCR through the web, there is a user guide available as well. So inquiry will be mandatory for credit applications for €2,000 or greater. So if a member applies for credit with you for €2,000 or greater, you must carry out a credit check on the CCR. This comes into effect from September 30th next year, and that's across the board for all lenders. So that check is mandatory. At your discretion, you may make inquiries for applications for credit from €500 up to €2,000. So that's at the discretion of each lender. Also at your discretion is the making of an inquiry where a CIS, that's a credit information subject. Those of you that have accessed the guidance will be hopefully familiar with some of the acronyms at this stage. So a credit information subject is your borrower. So where they come to you to seek a change to the nature or term of the credit agreement, you can access the CCR to check their record at that point also. Or where your member goes into arrears on their loan with you, you can also access the CCR, access their record at that point too. So for lenders that have overdrafts or credit cards, in addition, they can access that customer's record where they exceed the limit on their overdraft or on their credit card. So it's important to note that you must retain a record of inquiry. So when you access a customer's record, you must keep a record when you accessed and the purpose for which you accessed. So we've set out some guidance in respect of what that record of inquiry might look like, but really you need to be comfortable that you can demonstrate you had appropriate basis to access someone's record. So it must be for one of the reasons I've mentioned, and I'll come on to the purposes now. So the purpose for which you can use the data that you retrieve from the CCR are set out in the Credit Reporting Act. So in respect of credit applications, when you access a credit record on the CCR, you can use the data you receive to verify the information that that customer has given to you on their credit application and evaluate any risk that may arise from providing the credit that they've sought. Where a member or a borrower is requesting a change to the nature or term of their credit agreement, you can access the CCR and use the data basically to evaluate the risk of granting that change. Where a member has missed a payment, or for other lenders where they've exceeded a limit on their overdraft or credit card, you can access the CCR to monitor the failure of that borrower in meeting obligations. So you'll see how they're performing with other lenders. So it's important to note that these are the only purposes for which data from the CCR can be used. There are no other purposes set out in the Act. For example, you cannot use data from the CCR for marketing purposes. And there are offences set out in the Act really to safeguard the use of data from the CCR. So when will data be available in the CCR? So inquiries will commence in Q1 of 2018 once data quality has been assured. So both lenders and consumers will have access to credit reports from the same date. So as the quality of the data that comes into the CCR directly impacts the quality of the credit reports that you will receive and your consumers will receive, it is imperative that all lenders, including credit unions, work through any data quality issues that are being identified at the moment as you are testing your data. So in this respect, it is acknowledged that there have been issues identified with older historic loans where the remediation of the data is challenging and depends on the cooperation of borrowers that you may have long lost contact with. And this challenge is acknowledged, and we have worked with your technical suppliers and worked with credit unions directly to come up with a course of action depending on the scenarios involved. So we understand that these records are, relatively speaking, low in volume. We would expect that you continue to try on a best efforts basis to remediate the data, and we take in the records where there is good data quality in the interim. So we will make a credit report, a sample report, available to you in the lender area of the CCR websites at centralcreditregister.ie shortly. But just for this evening, I wanted to give you a flavour of what information will appear on the CCR credit report. So from the 30th of June this year, we have started building a credit history on loans outstanding at that date. So depending on the nature of the loan, we will have the following categories of information. Again, this is just a sample of the data fields. The full list of data fields is available in the CCR submission manual that's in the lender area of the CCR website. So the loan profile data, you'll know what product is there, the start and end date, the limit that was agreed. Payment data will include specifics on the next payment date and the amount, the payment method, is it being repaid by direct debit or by cash. And then from the June 30th, we have started building that credit history. So in time, we will have a 24-month rolling history of performance data. So that will include the outstanding balance, any restructure events, number of payments past due, and the credit status. In time as well, we will have a picture of events in the previous 5 years. So if there was, for example, the maximum number of payments past due in any 5-year period will be a single standalone piece of information on the CCR credit report. When we start inquiries, so when you as lenders start inquiries on the CCR, you will be submitting a small amount of credit data as part of each inquiry. So for example, we will be gathering the credit amount that's sought and the product type. And this information will then be available on the credit report also for the previous 6 months. So when you access one of your borrowers' credit reports, you'll see a summary of applications that they have made for credit in the past 6 months. So you'll know what they applied for, what the amount they applied for, and the product type. You'll also see a footprint of access. You won't see names of lenders, but you'll see the date of any inquiry that was carried out and the purpose. As you're aware, licensed moneylenders and local authorities are also in scope for the CCR, and they will begin reporting data to the CCR in 2018. So by the 30th of September next year, they will have reported all loans outstanding at the 31st of March. And that data, where relevant, where your borrowers also have loans with licensed moneylenders or local authorities, that will be included on the credit report during that time also. So other features of the credit report will include an explanatory statement. So this is where consumers may wish to include a statement to perhaps qualify information on their report, to explain perhaps a series of missed payments. This will be something that will be open to the consumer to do, and that will be visible, importantly so, to other lenders to assist in qualifying perhaps some information that's there. It's important to note as well that consumers will receive more detail on their credit report than you as lenders. So they will see a 5-year history for all of the data that is gathered in. They will obviously see names of lenders who have inquired. So this is the footprint that's on the credit report. They will see the name of the lender, the date the lender accessed their credit report, and the purpose for which they accessed the credit report. So that's quite important for the consumer to be able to keep track of who is accessing their data and to see have they a clear basis for actually accessing that data. So as I said, we will make a sample report available in the lender area of the CCR website, which will give you full details of what will be available. Okay, so just turning to the fees for the CCR. We issued a communication a few weeks ago through our website with any updates or communications that we issue, we notify all the users of the CCR website, so hopefully this is familiar to everyone here. So in that communication on fees, we set out that we won't be charging for access to the CCR until January 2019. So although inquiry will commence next year and the mandatory inquiry will start from the 30th of September next year, no fees will be payable until 2019. The exact fees to be paid will be set out in Q1 of next year, and again we'll publish an update to our website and ensure you're notified about that update. In terms of the basis for the fees, so there's a number of variables to take into account here. Included in that is the trade credit matter, which you'll be familiar with. So this is where the text in our Credit Reporting Act unintentionally excludes credit provided to facilitate the purchase of goods or services from that same company. So that unintentional piece of text excludes hire purchase and some leasing agreements subject to the terms and conditions. We are supporting the Department of Finance in bringing about a legislative amendment to bring hire purchase and leasing agreements into scope as soon as possible. But that is one of the variables that is feeding into the process of agreeing the fees for the CCR. So as I said, we will publish more information on our website. We'll notify you when we do that. It's important to note in terms of fees, we have the flexibility to both charge a fee and introduce a levy at a later stage. But I think what we need to do is review our approach after a period of operation. So when we have information on volumes of inquiries on the CCR, we'll be in a better position to look at the approach to the funding of the CCR. So finally, I just want to give you some information about our consumer information. So as I said, the credit reports, CCR credit reports will be available to lenders and to consumers from the same point in time in 2018. So at the moment, on our CCR website, we have a consumer area, and that gives consumers information about the CCR, about the phasing, about the type of products that are included, and the type of data that we're collecting. We will be building on this in 2018. So when inquiries start, we will be making various guides available to consumers. So for example, to understand their credit report, there will be a sample report which will explain all the various terms in the report, what they mean. There'll also be information on how a consumer actually goes about requesting the report, their rights under the Act, how they seek an amendment, so how a consumer would go about seeking an amendment to data that is inaccurate on their credit report. As I mentioned earlier, they'll have the opportunity, if they wish, to place an explanatory statement on the CCR, and there'll be a guide on how to do that, and also to place a notice of suspected impersonation on their credit report. And again, the idea is that that would be visible to other lenders. If someone is trying to make a credit application in the name of someone, they will see that there's a notice of suspected impersonation, and that will indicate that they need to take caution with that particular application. So our information that we will make available to consumers has been put through a plain English test to make sure that it is understandable for consumers. It's also available in Irish, and in addition to that, we will have videos on the CCR website. So the intention is just to ensure we're providing as much information as possible to all the different categories of consumers to assist them in understanding the CCR and their credit report. Okay. So just to finish, in terms of next steps, so we're at the 7th of November today. Your reporting deadline is the 31st of December, so a few weeks away. It's just quite important at this stage, it's quite critical at this stage, that you check your state of readiness as a credit union for reporting to the CCR for meeting that deadline. I know many of you will be thinking, well, my technical provider is looking after that, but really the legal responsibility to report rests with you as a credit union, so it is important that you take on that responsibility and come to us if you have any queries or there are any challenges that you foresee. The email address there is quite a mouthful, but that is the email address to use, siponboarding@centralcreditregister.ie, but you feel free to contact me in the central bank also if you have any queries. In terms of inquiry, I would encourage you to look at the guidance on the CCR, so that gives a lot more information than what I covered tonight on obligations for inquiry and also your power to make inquiries on the CCR. I think in terms of the credit report and the information, the credit reports are quite detailed. It would be quite important that we run some information seminars with credit unions in 2018, and I'll come back to you with some dates for that through our website.